The people who we have in this community who are willing to take risk cannot be underestimated as major contributors to this community. They make a difference, whether they're hosting a 40-team tournament or a $2.5 million air show.
The following is a Big Sky Economic Development production.
It's Mars B.
And Kavo.
And this is The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
A business podcast.
Where we bring you entrepreneurs, small business owners, and community leaders of Montana.
To share their stories, expertise, industry insights, and strategies.
And we are sharing them all with you every single week.
You don't want to miss this.
Learn how to better start, manage, and grow your business.
And your leadership style.
Tangible takeaways to save you time and improve whatever it is that you're working on.
You're listening to The Vault.
Visit Billings is a proud supporter of today's podcast and Big Sky Economic Development. More than 2.6 million people visit Billings annually, spending $621 million. We are committed to supporting the business community by working to provide tourism services, sales, and marketing support at Montana's Trailhead. Travel to visitbillings.com for more details. We hope you enjoy this episode of The Vault at 201 North Broadway.
As I reflect on my time interning at the Billings Chamber, one standout figure comes to mind, Alex Tyson. Under Alex's leadership with the Visit Billings team, I discovered a style of leadership that left an enduring mark on my perspective. It drew me back to memories of my summers working in the family fencing business alongside my dad and brother. In both realms, I encountered a quiet yet potent form of leadership. Alex and my father embodied a philosophy of leading by doing, never hesitating to roll up their sleeves and work alongside those they guided. And when asked about influential leaders in Billings, Alex, you're the name that consistently rises to the surface. This episode is a cherished opportunity as we delve into your journey. So welcome, Alex, to The Vault. We're so excited to have you with us today to just talk about you, your upbringing, and all of the great things you do for Billings. So
you have
honored.
such a cool story. We're so excited to share it.
Well, I'm excited to be here in Marcel's presence because I adore Marcel, and I'm so glad to get to know you. And your digs are so cool. I've only been in the building a couple of times, so
thanks.
I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah, it's fun to be in a historic monster vault, as they called them. So yeah, the door obviously is pinned open. Otherwise, I don't think I would be in here either. But yeah, I never came in it before, like in the construction phases. Didn't feel safe. So each episode, we just kick off asking our guests where they grew up.
Oh, it's a hard one for me.
Because we'd love to know.
Yes. This is always just almost, I'm proud of my response to this question, but I always feel like I take it too far. You know,
no, we want
people
it.
Just
we want the details.
Yeah.
No, we want the nitty gritty. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you would probably liken my upbringing to more military, where you move a lot. But I was a Park Service kid, so I was literally born in Yosemite National Park.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah,
who gets to say that?
Not very many people.
Not very many people.
And it was one of the last years that the hospital in Yosemite was actually open. It's, I think, maybe when I was 2 or 3, it closed and became just a clinic. But I was literally born in Yosemite National Park, not on a park bench like people want to always make fun of, but in a hospital. My dad was in the Park Service. My grandfather was actually in the Park Service. And then my older brother is in the Park Service, so we have 3 generations of Park Service with us. But
cool.
We lived in Yosemite, and then we moved to Crater Lake National Park as my dad was promoted within the Park Service. My parents got divorced when we were in Crater Lake when I was young. And in the Park Service, if you get divorced, there's no place to live. If you're not working for the park or you're not married to somebody who's a Park Service employee, then it's not like you can just stay in the park. So my mom and I, at that point, moved to Albuquerque, which is where she had lived before being married. And then my mom remarried, and she remarried a gentleman who was kind of a computer geek before it was really cool to be a computer whiz. And so we went from Albuquerque to Tulsa to Ohio to Houston, back to Tulsa to San Antonio. And then I would spend my summers wherever my dad was at the time in his Park Service journey. And about 15 of those years were spent in Yellowstone. So as much as I loved San Antonio and was very close with my mom and my stepdad, I loved Montana. I loved my summers in Yellowstone. They lived in Mammoth, so I would always be like at park headquarters. And that's where I just kind of, as I graduated from high school, wanted to end up. So I've been in Montana ever since.
Oh, wow. It does that to people. Montana does.
I know, it does.
It doesn't. You remember that really well. Like I feel like when sometimes people are like, oh, I moved from this spot, and then I have to think like you have it down in that loop. So you ended up graduating out of Texas.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So I spent my high school years were all in San Antonio, and then my summers were here in Yellowstone.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. And I had like really just this good mix of being in a major metropolitan area during a school year and then being able to be in a community of, like 40 permanent people, so to speak, much like you guys.
Yeah.
There was no better place to spend summers than in Yellowstone. And I knew then, even just watching visitors, and I worked for the concessionaires every summer.
I was going to ask if your dad gave you a job.
Yeah, I couldn't work for the Park Service, but I was able to work for park concessionaires. So I scooped ice cream at Hamilton stores.
Nice.
I pumped gas for Yellowstone Park Service stations. I mowed lawns for TW, which was a concessionaire, which is now Xanterra. They have that contract.
Oh, okay.
Pumping gas, which I don't know if they do that anymore.
They don't. It was all full service. And we also changed tires, changed oil, and then we helped people who would lock themselves out of their vehicles.
Oh, wow. What a
great
skill.
set to
I know.
have. I'm like,
It was awesome.
I locked myself out of my car once.
Like
And I had
the
to
old
call someone.
Jimmys.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And changing tires, which is helpful anytime you travel in Montana.
Yes, and we scooped ice cream. Hamilton stores always carried Wilcoxons. So
Yeah, Huckleberry ice cream.
Yes, so the people that I worked with, we would always, those buckets, inevitably it would be done a little sooner than it needed to be so that we could take it out back and eat the ice cream, eat the profits.
So
That
what's your
makes sense.
favorite
Quality
flavor?
testing.
Yeah.
Exactly. You had to know,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Gosh.
So what was your favorite flavor?
The peanut butter. Yeah, that peanut butter chocolate
Okay.
chip that they have,
I'll
solid.
have to try that.
Yeah.
I like Moose Tracks a lot.
Moose
but
Tracks is good, yeah.
that
They
peanut
have a
butter.
really good pineapple sorbet,
Oh.
and it makes a
Of course you would bring in the
delicious
sorbet.
pina colada.
Noted. Okay.
It's prioritized.
Yeah.
Yes.
With pina colada.
I love it.
So you fell in love with Montana through your dad's kind of like Park Service location in Yellowstone. So what happened after you graduated from high school?
So I went to MSU, and I was in Bozeman for a time, and then I transferred to Montana State University Billings.
And what led that transfer?
I was from a very large high school. I mean, there was 4,500 people in my high
Wow.
school. For some reason, when I got to MSU, and I love MSU, it's a beautiful campus, but it was too big for me. So for me, it was really about size of I was overwhelmed by MSU at the time for me. And I had not anticipated that at all. I thought it was going to be a really easy transition. And I by no means want that to come across to people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously that's an individual journey.
Well, I came from a small town and I thought the same thing of it when I visited for school things. I was like, I don't know, this is a little, and I'm from like a tiny town too, so I think it's just preference.
Yeah. And then my now husband was at Rocky Mountain College too. So that was always an added bonus to be able to spend a little extra time with him. But yeah, I was all in on MSU, and it was a great school. It just wasn't great for me. And when I got here, I just loved it. And I mean, it was just the professors, in communications in that department, I just really thrived.
And so what was your degree pathway? Internships? Did you do internships? If you want to talk a little bit about those things.
Yeah, I initially had wanted to be like in the U.S. Forest Service. I wanted to do something outside in a .gov in an agency. I didn't anticipate going into the Park Service, but I definitely wanted to do something outside. And then I took an elective in communications, and that completely redrew my path. And I ended up in mass communications and then organizational communications. And I did an internship with J.C. Vanetta who is actually, you might know Jeremy Vanetta. It's his older brother who was also my RA.
Oh, wow.
They had an adjunct professor who was anchoring the 5:30 and 10 o'clock news at the time. She was Laura Thornquist or Laura Hendrickson at the time. And she was looking for nighttime camera operators for their 5:30 and 10 o'clock. And JC was like, want to do it? It's an internship. And I was like, heck yeah, let's go do it. And we did the 5:30 and 10, and then they hired us part-time out of college, out of the internship, and then full-time out of college. And I also did an internship at the Yellowstone Public Affairs Office and worked for the park photographer. So all things that I thought were going to lead me into being in some sort of agency position. I spent 15 years in broadcast. So that was never, ever part of the plan. Yeah.
Wow. So tell me about that. How was it being in broadcasting and on the news? And
it was amazing. Yeah. I mean,
like, what's it like? You know, we talked to Julie a little, and she's like, you need to talk to Alex too, because you guys worked together a little bit, right? But what's that like? It just seems that we were talking about it earlier where we're like, oh my gosh, those people have to get up at like 2 a.m.
to
to
get
be there at 3.
At the beginning, when you're just, reporting, and you're what they have now are MMJs, which is kind of like that one-man band, multimedia journalist that is today.
Oh, where they carry the cameras around and they set it up and then they come in and do their interviews by themselves?
Yes. So that's what I started out as. And it was part-time with school. And even when I was hired full-time out of college, that was what I did. And it was like school beat and crime beat. And you would do school board meetings or city council meetings, or you would go and sit in on arraignments in different courts, whether it's district court or city. And then you would do a lot of stories. I did a lot of features, following, little kids on their first trips to the fair. But we also did things like, town hall meetings with then President Clinton, and had really great opportunities. And then I grew into a chief photographer position in Great Falls. And then in Great Falls, they gave me my first opportunity at KRTV to do some anchoring. And then I ended up getting the morning news anchor position there.
In Great Falls. So you ended up, MSUB, and then worked a little bit, and then moved to Great Falls?
I did. I worked full-time at Q2 for, I think, about a year and a half. And then Calvin and I, my husband, we were getting married, and he had a position that was offered to him in Great Falls. And so I had called the news director there to see if there was any availability for me to come to that station. And I just transferred with the company there. And then, with all due respect, with Great Falls, we have great colleagues and great friends there and great memories. But it was like 18 months, the first person to get a job back in Billings, let's go. And so I transferred back to this position or to a reporting position here. And then it must have been maybe a year and a half after that the morning show opened up, and they hired both Julie and I to be co-anchors, which was a big deal then, to have two female anchors on a desk. Nobody would think of it at all today,
right?
But it was a big deal for the company and for media at the time, especially in the region. Having two females.
So what was that? I mean, like anchoring. Can you talk a little bit about what that day-to-day was like and what that training is leading up to that? Because when we've gone on in the morning, it's like quick, in and out, you're done.
It's like a well-oiled really machine,
Well, when I first started, I think that it's just like with many, I was ready and prepared for it, but I really wasn't ready and prepared for it. And I'm super thankful to Julie. Julie had many more years of experience, and she was the weekend anchor when I was her weekend reporter. So I appreciated and hated her all at the same time. And I tell her this all the time. Like, I see her and I'm like, she taught me so much. I mean, she really, really did. She was not kind to me. I mean, she was, and not in a personal sort of way. I mean, she expected a lot of me, and we had an assignment editor named Kay Erickson, who now works for Yellowstone Public Radio, and she was also our assignment editor. So I joke that between Kay and Julie, it was like, I mean, it was every day, hardcore. I mean, I would go in, Julie would get in at 2, and I would start working at 9 on a Saturday and a Sunday. And I would think that I had great news content for her. And she would come in and just, I need you to go do this. I need you to go do that. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, this isn't enough? What's not enough for you,
I was trying.
I was trying so hard. So when I took that show with her and we became partners on the desk, she was so heavy news, kind of harder news oriented, and really had such great direction for the show that it helped me tremendously. I just, there were stories where I had a great work ethic. She helped take me to the next level for sure. And, but yeah, I mean, that show, and I think she did it for maybe a year and a half with me. And then she went ahead and did other things, but I would never have been able to be as successful as I was solo on that desk had I not started with her being on the desk with me. But it's you're up at 2:30. There was a chunk of that time, of that 10 years for me, where I did the noon news as well. So, you could get there at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and then, leave like at 12:45 or 1 o'clock and do the 2 shows. But it was a total gift. And, you're impacting the way that people wake up every single morning and having an impact on their lives. So
what was your routine like? I'm so curious. Like the news, it just fascinates me. Like with your routine, you're newly married, and then you're like, see you like tonight, because you're out of the house.
But I have to go to sleep early.
I know. And I was
about that.
super disciplined when I first started and we didn't have children. It was really easy. I'd get home at 1 o'clock and it was like, what am I going to do today? Am I going to go work out? Am I going to clean? I would go to movies and we would hang out. There was because you don't have typical days off. And we had amazing reporters then that were so fun, like Joe Gale and Frank Field and Claudia Sears, and we were really, and Janelle Slade, we were just a core group of just very, very good friends too. So it's like on their days off, we would go hiking or do whatever. But when I had our first son, Cade, it was fine. Like I would go to work early, and I have an amazing husband who's, very connected, and you couldn't do it otherwise. There's not, daycare at 3:30 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And, but I can remember it was hard early on because he would be getting up at 4 or 3:30 as I was walking out the door crying, and I would have no choice but to leave. I have an entire show to write and to produce and to execute. I had to absolutely change my brain because it's not like you're going to a cubicle and you can change, you can just figure your way through it.
You're not on camera.
Yeah, I'm expected to look decent, And then in the morning you have, we had amazing employees, but you also have life that happens. People sleep in, they don't show up, they quit, and finding replacements to edit, an hour show and help with writing or anything like that time of day is just nearly impossible. People aren't answering their phones. They don't want to answer their phones if it's me calling them at,
Like, no, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
It's on silent.
Yes. So it worked out. It was kind of nice to begin with because we would do, part day daycare, and then I would get home about 12:30, 12:45. My husband would go pick up Cade, and then we would have lunch together, and then he would go back to work, and Cade and I would nap, and then we'd get up and go do whatever fun. And I had this great quality of time and quantity of time with him. And I felt like it was the best of both worlds. And then when we had our second son, about 4 years later, our eldest son wasn't napping. And then it became this, I have quantity of time in the afternoons, but I have zero quality of life. I was just exhausted. I was, not able. I remember there being, the majority of the nights, I would just watch the first 10 minutes of the 10 o'clock news so that I would know what I was going into the next morning. And so
you're not getting much sleep.
Yeah, I'm not getting much sleep at all. So, but I wouldn't change it for the world. It was a total gift. The people I worked with and for, John Stepanek was the most amazing leader and just so good to me. And to have, Rob Monaco was our director. I don't know if you know Rob, but we have great people. And so that season of my life, I reflect on very positively. Even Julie. Just kidding.
Thank you, Julie.
That's awesome. So now you're at this point where you're like, I need to make a change.
Yeah.
What led you into tourism?
Yeah. So I knew that I needed a change. And it's one of those things where it's time, and you just know that it all works out for the best and that opportunities come. But Janelle Slade, who was working, I think, at St. Vincent Healthcare at the time, because she left for a certain period of her career and then went back into television. But she was colleagues with John Brewer. And John had just come back from Spokane. So he had worked for the Billings Chamber, had left to go to work for Spokane, and then had come back in his CEO position and wanted a community relations position. And Janelle, who's a dear friend of mine, knew that I was really struggling, and I was operating at zero capacity. And she said, you should really look at this community relations job. And I was like, that was really overwhelming for me, because in television, you don't work with Microsoft Outlook. Your programs, you're technically savvy. You're editing, you're producing, you're writing. There's a whole bunch of, equipment that you're very knowledgeable of, but you're not emailing, you're not doing projects in PowerPoint. It's just a different thing. And so for me, it was really overwhelming. I was like 37 years old, and I thought, oh my gosh, I know nothing about the real world because I've been in this television world. And so he and I met, and he had offered me the position a little bit later, called me for my response. And I was like, next time, it's not for me. And he was like, well, what do you mean it's not for you? And I was like, no, I think that I need to go and get my master's degree. I don't think that I'll be able to fulfill the obligations of the position. And he was like, well, what are you nervous about? And I was like, well, Microsoft Office Suite, and, I work in different types of programs that are really news-based programs.
And probably a lot harder. I mean, but just different.
It's just
but
different.
Outlook can be difficult.
That's true.
I will be honest, sometimes I still struggle with it.
I know. It sounds so remedial though, right? Like, it's like,
I get it.
37 years old and I can't do Outlook, right? And so he was like, that's ridiculous, and really encouraged me to do it. And so had he not had that belief in me, I would never have taken the job, and I don't know where I would be today. But he believed in me, and I did the community relations position for a time, and then they created a vice president of the chamber position for me at that time. And then I had a little bit of a blip on the radar of probably helping manage a membership-based organization through the recession. There was a lot of, I think I was just in a hole where it was businesses closing, businesses dropping their membership because they couldn't make payroll. It was a really stressful time. And I think that for me, even coming out of that, and we managed out of that very successfully, at the end of it, I was exhausted and probably just needed to take a good vacation. But instead, I decided that I was going to go in. So I had about a 40-day absence from the chamber.
Okay.
and then the Visit Billings position, which it wasn't Visit Billings at the time, but it was like the Billings CVB and TBID executive director position had opened about 3 months before I left. And they were still looking for some people and hadn't had good luck on national searches. And so then I took this position and was so glad to be back in the organization. Mm-hmm. And, I felt like it was right where I needed to be and always wanted to be. It was like, tourism was in my veins, and in my blood.
Yeah, the puzzle piece fit, and you were like,
back.
Yeah, it did. The whole thing came to fruition, and I knew so much, and we travel so much, and we explore so much that it really was just an easy fit from a mission point of view. And then, of course, just all the onboarding of working with the board and stakeholders had changed. You're not working with members, you're working with stakeholders who are our hoteliers and our lodging partners. And so it was a very different job, but it felt so comfortable. And I was so excited that you could help, scream from the rimrocks, hey, come to Billings, because there's so much here for you.
And did the chamber, how long have they had the CVB? Was that since they started? I should know that, but I don't.
Yeah, so the state lodging tax started in the late 1980s.
Okay.
And so, the position has been there for a long time. And it was, like if you were to go stay a night at a Billings hotel, for easy math, your rate is $100. It's $108 with an 8% state lodging tax. And that 8%, which Billings pays in about $11 million a year from your guests are paying that tax, that all goes to Helena to help with the state's general fund and to help market Montana, to help market our other regions and CVBs in the state. Billings gets back about $450,000 annually. And so back in 2007 or so, when we had just a CVB and not a TBID, our budget was about $225,000 to market and sell Billings. And so it's just that kind of reoccurring thing, right? Like you need more people in your community in order to help with your visitor economy. You need more people in your community to help with that tax too, right? And grow that tax that's helping the state's general fund and Montana State Parks and the Historical Society, et cetera. So that's why we get that portion back. But at $225,000 in the mid-2000s, you're not getting anywhere.
That's not a lot.
No. Rapid City had like $1.5 million. I think
wow.
that Cody had a couple $1 million. And people were coming to Billings because of where we're genetically located or geographically located in the region. But it wasn't like we could, play a big role in getting, your hog rallies or your gold wings or your sports tournaments and those sorts of things. So John had been in Spokane, where they had a tourism assessment program. And so John, when he came back into this role, he worked with Steve Warlick and Shelley Mann and the late Bruce McIntyre. And working off of the Business Improvement District legislation, they started the first Tourism Business Improvement District in 2007 here in Billings.
Wow. And was that the first one in the state?
We were the first one in the state. And today there's 19.
Wow.
Wow.
And there's some in California, there's some in Washington, but more and more states are looking to Montana as this, kind of role model for how you can continue to invest in marketing and selling your destination and really helping with product development. So that $108 room is now $110, but instead of most of that 8% going to Helena and being allocated, then that $2 all stays local and helps us with our staff and all of our revenue. And the overall mission then is to, fill hotel rooms. But by filling hotels, it's obviously bigger than that because you're filling your restaurants, your retailers, and your attractions and helping with that visitor economy.
So you were a big part of getting it to the TBID, correct? Because when you came in, it was the CVB, and then through that whole process, you guys worked together to do the TBID.
So my predecessor, Joan Cronebush, was the CVB director at the time when we started our TBID. I was in the chamber and I watched it all happen, but I wasn't working necessarily for that division of the chamber. But it was game changing for tourism in Montana. It's just, you can't do much with, I think that we had at that point 1.25 FTEs. You were maybe going to a trade show or two. Maybe you had a couple print placements in some publications, but by no means were you really having that big of an impact in marketing Billings.
And so how is some of that? So you said it wasn't Visit Billings back then. Can you talk to us a little bit so our audience and our listeners can learn a little bit more about how do tourism entities function within a community?
Yeah.
And where the Visit Billings, why that came to be?
And it's funny because, the same reasons why people want to live here are the same reasons why people want to visit here. And so all of the, the events and the rims and the trails and all of those things that people want to live in Billings for or want access to, like the Beartooth Highway or hiking or all of the state parks or the national monuments in Yellowstone. Those are reasons why people come here. And so a lot of times people just don't look at their community in the same way. And it's important for us to look at it. And take it from me who lived in 11 different places before 8th grade. Billings is amazing. It's an amazing community. And we have amazing people and businesses and visitors as well.
Yeah.
And leveraging that visitor dollar is important. There was a time when, I would be around a board table and it was like, I'm Alex Tyson with the Billings CVB and the TBID. And, people
are like, what are these acronyms you keep throwing at me?
They have no idea what it is, right? And there was other organizations like that. And it wasn't any type of, major epiphany that we became Visit Billings, but Vicki Lynn was helping us sell at the time. And we all talked about, you have Destination Missoula and Visit Kalispell and, Visit Dallas, and everybody does that. It was our time to go ahead and rebrand. So Visit Billings is just essentially the brand that we use, to represent the CVB, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau for Billings, as well as the Tourism Business Improvement District. And that way people's eyes just don't roll back in their head when you like read off a bunch of acronyms.
It makes a little more sense. We definitely get that. We are acronym city.
Yes.
With all of our things, I would say.
We used to hand out a list when an employee started, and it was like, here's your acronyms and here's their definitions. And it was
Here's
like,
what they do.
Yeah. So it's difficult though, right?
oh yeah. That's crazy how that all happened. And you've kind of been in it throughout this whole entire time as it's transitioned into what it is today. Can you talk to us about like what you do here in Billings to highlight and promote visiting Billings?
So first of all, it's all about our staff. I mean, we have, and you guys know our team. Our team is amazing. We're so fortunate to be managed by the Chamber of Commerce, and we have access to all the divisions within the Chamber. Southeast Montana, Visit Billings, and then obviously all of the Chamber divisions as far as membership is concerned and events and that sort of thing. But if you kind of look at Visit Billings and our mission and how we budget and spend to sell and market Billings is really all about like that portfolio. You know, a major part of our investment is leisure visitation. People want to come to Billings, whether they're regional and they use Billings as kind of their event center or their activity center or their business center. And then you also have people who are across the world and across the country who are hitting Badlands, Rushmore, Devil's Tower, Little Bighorn Battlefield, Pompey's Pillar, the Beartooth Highway into Yellowstone, and then maybe up into Glacier. So we're really part of that Great American Road Trip piece. And so Allie Eggert in our office, along with our agency, Sunshine and Bourbon, and we have a great buying group, Goodway Group, they work very, very hard to do the major foundation of Visit Billings, which is leisure. And why leisure is important is it helps all the hotels. It's not just a meeting hotel. It's not just kind of a sports-focused hotel. It helps all hotels across the city. And because everybody has their rate.
Their preferred
they have
place
their,
to stay when they travel.
Their flag that they like, their brand. You know, we're all brand loyal to some, to some extent. And so leisure is definitely the bread and butter for Billings. At one point in time, meeting and conventions were the other part of the bread and butter. And meeting and convention is by all means extremely important to Billings and our visitor economy still today. But somewhere in about 2012, 2013, sports really started kind of coming up above meetings and conventions. So it's not that we've backed off meetings and conventions, but we've continued to elevate our sports growth. And Marcel was a part of a lot of our major
They were fun.
plays. Yeah. In 2012, the TBID board said, hey, sports has always been important to us, but it's more important and we need to start making headway in this segment. And so we hired a sports consultant who had been at the Spokane Sports Commission, and he really taught us how to bid for events, how to have relationships with our national governing bodies, how to really work with our local tournament owners who are doing great tournaments that could really even be bigger and bring more visitors into the community. So sports is definitely very important to us. And Evan Decker is our sports tourism manager and is in charge of selling Billings for sports. And then meeting and convention, we have 5 convention hotels, the Northern, the Doubletree, the Billings Hotel and Convention Center, the Bighorn Resort, and the Hilton Garden Inn. They all have meeting space. And then we have Mr. Veter's space that's going to be coming online with that Marriott Courtyard at some point. And so with that, we really work hard to work with state association and meeting planners, national and regional meeting planners to help with conventions and meetings that will be held in Billings. And all of those hotels have their own sales staff, but we try to go to shows and we try to give them, tools that maybe there's a planner who's looking at Madison, Wisconsin, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Billings. What can we do to incentivize that planner? And then we do group tours on the domestic and international level. And then the big thing is, too, obviously, you invite people to come into your community. Luke Ashmore is kind of our visitor experience guy, and he has certified tourism ambassador programs and ways to really train us as residents to have meaningful conversations and reciprocal conversations with our visitors so that they have a really good time.
Which is so important.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
they're not getting kicked and oh, go to blah, or I don't know what to do, because they just don't know what's in their own backyard.
Well,
which I think is common.
It is
Oh,
common.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, how many times do you go, oh, you're checking out somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm just driving through. Do you have any recommendations of something to do while I'm here? And then they're like, there's Walmart down the street.
Yeah.
No, they want the local taste. They want
Been
the
to a
local
Walmart,
experience.
So
Yeah.
being more, having the community more educated on things that are available to do is super important.
Yeah. And we did research in 2010 that showed that it was kind of like that secret shopper research,
okay.
right? And so what would happen is their secret shoppers, so to speak, would go into hotels to check in, and you'd say, hey, I'm here for an afternoon, or I'm here for the night, or I have the afternoon free. What should I do? And it was like literally like 10 out of 10 times the frontline staff would say, there's nothing to do here.
You're just like,
Just go to Red Lodge.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
which, I mean, it's
a
not
missed opportunity.
It is a missed opportunity, but I don't think at the time, like, unless you kind of elevate Billings and you appreciate where you live, it's easy to kind of get, we always talk and joke about people want to have conversations about, oh, how bad traffic is, or, this
Or the lack
pothole
of,
or
yeah.
something. And it's like, no, let's, so back then what we did was, the board was reading all of this research and said, oh, hold on a second, we've got serious work to do. How do we move the needle here? And so they started the Tourism Trailhead Ambassador Program, which is the TTA, and it was kind of our homegrown way of kind of doing visitor education. And we would take people on kind of like adult field trips where maybe you haven't ever been to the battlefield or Pompey's Pillar or Yellowstone County Museum or the YAM or Harry Koyama's gallery, or maybe you've never come downtown. And it was our way of getting people in a bus or in a van, and we would take them so that they would, whether they were waiters, waitresses, hosts, hostesses, bartenders, frontline employees at our lodging partners, or maybe a zoo employee, that you were just looking at Billings in a different way, And so then what's happened is over the course of the past 2 years, we've graduated from that TTA program to the CTA program, which is a nationally recognized program that we've invested a lot of money in, and that Luke is the program director on. And so if you have a willingness to become a CTA.
I was just thinking
Yeah,
we should
he
go.
did. I remember being part of a focus group with him or something, and it was great. Yeah.
Yes.
I
And
would love to do it because I love knowing fun things to do around town.
Yeah, and it's a program. So like it's a certification. So you can say that you're a CTA and have the PIN, and it really does the test itself and just the book that comes with the class. It's like a 3-hour class that he holds. And you think that you know everything that there is to know about Billings, but really you don't. And it's really an interesting class.
And so fun, I think, just for visitors too, to know that, there are community members that care enough about learning and doing these things so that they better host, like me, visitor coming in, like they care about us, and they want, people, wherever they're coming from, to have a good experience when they're here.
Well, because
I
if
think
they
that's
have
important.
if they have a good experience while they're here, they'll come back.
They'll
tell their friends.
Just kidding. But we would love that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like in your roles and in Big Sky Economic Development as a whole, it's very similar missions. We just have different ways of doing it. We all want, the community to thrive and for,
Strong
Yeah.
economy.
Yes. And so it's just, we all have our different programs and projects that kind of help, make way.
Move that along. I do love, it reminds me, I had a video, I know you guys had a crew in recently. We had a guy in too recently, and he snuck in. He came in a day early, didn't tell us, which is fine, totally great. But he just was so stunned with Billings and its beauty and how clean it was and friendly. And so I think it's fun to hear people's perspective and view and their experience of Billings, because it's really positive. They're like, I feel so safe, and they're coming from big, like Dallas, large market areas, and just having their perspective, I think, is so interesting and valuable.
And I think that's one of the greatest assets of people who are new to your community outside of expanding your tax base. I do think that there's that perspective, like all the things that many people might think are negatives. It's like, wait a minute, you have no idea how good you have it here.
You should travel a little.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I think that perspective is very good. And that program offers that perspective too. I can't think of how many people have said to me, "Oh, you work downtown. Like, what's new downtown?" It's like, well, go downtown.
There's a lot of new things. I can't even keep up anymore, which transitions us. I want to ask some other questions too. It sounds like you guys, and having worked a little through an internship with you guys, there's a lot of moving parts, moving pieces. So what are some things that you, as the executive director with a great team under you, how do you stay organized, check-ins with your teams? What are some of your leadership tools in your toolbox?
Hiring the right people. And I mean, really hiring people, it's not that simple, right? It's hiring the right people for your mission and for your organization who have the same work ethic and same goals personally. I think that for the most part, the majority of my team, we're all equals. We're all on the same wavelength. We all have 5 to 7 jobs to do. We're all there for each other, without a doubt. And so, but in order for us to operate, there's no micromanagement. It's my job to lead you so that you can grow yourself. Not for me to check in every 5 minutes, and I'm not going to stroke your ego. That's for sure, right? Like, great job, and I'm right here for it. But at the same time, we all have a lot of work to do, and we have people who depend on the work that we do, right? We have businesses that literally their bottom lines, their employees, their payroll depends on how we market and sell Billings. And so we don't take the mission lightly. We don't take the work lightly. And I think that that's a big key, is just that you have the right people in the jobs who appreciate the jobs and the roles and the mission, and that we all somehow just get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tell people that all the time when we're talking to small businesses and when they're getting ready to hire. We always say hire slow, fire fast. And it's just because you have to understand, is this the right person to fit my organization and our values? Because skills can be taught, but their passion for what you're doing, and if they're a right culture fit, that's stuff that can't really be taught.
Yeah.
So
It's true, right?
So what are some of those things that you look for in those candidates? I know you've had, which is great. Allie's been there, I know, coming up, on 7 or 8-ish?
Yeah.
I can't remember. Luke's been there a long time. You've retained your team really well, which I think is a testament to your leadership and your culture. But what are some of those things you look for in characteristics of a person when you're hiring?
If you want to work 5 hours and then go golf, it's probably not going to happen for us.
yeah. We get people have weird requests nowadays.
Yeah. John Brewer, who's our president and CEO, he does a great job leading also. But I think that a couple of the things that have happened for us is we've just been very, very fortunate. I mean, Marcel, you're one of them.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
You helped us so much with like the NAI Women's Basketball Championship. And we've had people that, whether they've stayed or not, I feel that we've had some type of impact on them, maybe negative to some, but we've, no matter what, had an impact on your professional journey. And they've had an impact on my professional journey. Mm-hmm. And that's just really, ultimately, we're all trying to do the best that we can, enjoy life along the way. There's sometimes really fun stuff in life, and there's sometimes really difficult stuff in life. And I'm here to help you through all of that, and really, love your job and love your work along the way. But you look at somebody like Luke, he was just a part-time employee.
Because he was going to school.
He was at MSUB. And for us, we were just happy to have him for a couple of hours a week. Mm-hmm. And then he just did such a good job of always having such an important role that it was like, I can't imagine not having this guy on our team. And so through the pandemic, we created the Special Projects and Programs Manager, because there isn't one thing that he does, but he does so many different things so well that you have to have him on your team as long as you can. Mm-hmm. I mean, you want to grow him, and it'd be great if he stayed, but in the meantime, you have these amazing workers and employees that you just hope to have for a fraction of time so that you can impact mission and move the organization forward. And if you keep them and retain them, great. And if not, you just hope that they've just had a good time and that you've grown them, and that the next thing that they do, that they're highly successful as well. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just all about making sure that you're helping people through life and they're helping with the mission.
Yeah, no, I those are great. And what about, so you manage a board too, and I think there's a lot of companies, organizations, and Billings that have boards we have two. So we have the EDA,
Boards
EDC.
or stakeholders too.
Stakeholders,
Yeah.
So what are some of those things that after working with a board for quite a few years are some things that you've learned from within that process?
I think one of the best things that you can do in an executive director position or an equivalent position where you're helping manage boards is be a board member yourself, and not just somebody who's just sitting, maybe showing up to monthly meetings, like being on an executive committee, being the president of a board, because I think it really does make you you have a better understanding of what you need from the person managing the board when you're on the other side of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I answer to the Chamber CVB board and with John, and then I also answer to the Tourism Business Improvement District board, which is made up of 7 hotel owners or owner designees that are all appointed by the city of Billings. So, what the Chamber CVB board needs from me is much different than what the Billings TBID board demands of us. I think it's very important to have your staff around the table. At least in the room. I mean, it depends on what your space is. But, for us on the TBID side, our staff is right at the table with us. And it's just important for you to understand that there are going to be times when you have a very vocal board member, maybe a board member that's difficult to make happy, maybe one that just needs a little bit more assistance, or maybe is a little bit more demanding. And then you will also have board members who are trusting you, who have other priorities, who want to be a part of the decision making and want to be a part of the organization. It's just going to be in a different way. So communicate. It's never like a well-oiled machine, right? There's always times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't communicated that with my board, or I haven't done this. I need to do that. Or gosh, you just think that it's just like life, right? There's always something more that you want to be doing for yourself and for your organizations and your team. But, you just have to do the best you can.
So kind of leading into my question for you is, you have a lot of people to answer to, and then you have your team that you work with. How do you navigate conflict? What are some tips that you could provide people who are in that a similar position where they have so many people that they have to communicate with, and they just maybe don't have the tools to manage a difficult conversation or conflict within team members? How would you give them some tips?
I think it's important to always just yield to, you don't ever know what somebody's going through. And I really feel like 8 out of 10 times when there's some type of conflict or there's something that's not going well, that there's something else happening, and that it's not about them, it's not about you, it's about a situation that, even if it's something that I'm going through, how that might reflect on how I see things.
Yeah.
What an employee might be going through, and they're not conveying it to you, then you don't know what's happening in their personal life, that this might become something that's more of an issue than it has been in the past. So I think the most important thing is just that communication. And, I'm in the office as much as I can be. I'm in the office every single day. And I have, navigated we have a hybrid where our staff can be in the office 16-hour equivalent. So it can be a Monday morning, a Tuesday morning, and all day on Thursday, however they want to cut their 16 hours. And sometimes you see them every single day, all day. And I'm sure some of them are, in the office 40 hours a week, some weeks, and sometimes you'll see them that 16 hours. That takes a whole nother level of that need for communication. But I think for me, I just have open lines of communication. You can call me, text me at any point in time, email me at any point in time. And I think that it's not my business to know what's going on in your personal life, but the more that you can share with me and the more I understand about what you're going through and the more transparent we are with each other, the less, it's not about, I don't need to know what's happening in your personal life. I don't need to, at the end of the day, let's just do our job. We have a job to do. Let's do it. But if there are things that I need to know, I think it's important for me to know that so that we can avoid the conflict. I'm not afraid of conflict.
Yeah.
But it's just getting to the basis of what's really happening with an employee that's important.
So I love that you say that. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to attend a conference about Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. And she actually says there's a part in it. She goes, the story I'm telling myself. So let's say there is a conflict occurring and you can walk up to him and be like, so the story I'm telling myself is that you don't want to be here. You don't like the job. And so that's why you're not doing your tasks. And then that person can come back and be like, actually, my grandma's really sick and I've been a little distracted. And then you're like, oh, okay, this makes so much more sense. Let's move forward and figure this out. Or it could honestly be we're like, actually, I really don't like this job. And that's a different kind of conversation. But at least you've opened it up in like not an aggressive way.
Yeah.
You're just like, the story I'm telling myself is. So I really like that you have that kind of communication with your team.
Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with experience too, right? I mean, I've had it to where I've had an employee who I found out through a roundabout sort of way applied for a job. And it's hard to not, like, especially that first time when you're like my younger self, I'm like, whoa, it's how do you not take it personally and defensively?
Yeah.
And I've learned through time, like, yeah, that's great. Like, go. I mean, it's, it's been a great ride and I wish you the best and let me know if I can help you find a job or, be a recommendation for you. But you're right. It is just like, life is not fun sometimes. And a lot of times that can reflect in our work. And I think that the more, even if you're not somebody who, like if you're a very private person, if like letting somebody know just little nuggets about what's happening, it can really help with that empathetic piece so that you can just have a moment to get through life and whatever that stage might be.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I think it helps that employee to probably feel better too, just like saying like, hey, I have this going on, like I'm not trying to, just be more transparent so that manager. And I think there's a lot of newer just in general in culture, but people in new management roles that do deal with things like conflict, but maybe don't have the training or experience quite yet for having dealt with conflict management for a long time.
Where it's hard for me is when there's somebody who doesn't have a good work ethic, or, maybe they've changed or, they're coasting. Those are the type of conversations that can get really difficult, I think, because, when you have a team of 5 people, if one person's coasting, it's one thing when you're going through something in life or you are transitioning in some capacity where you need to just take a deep breath and get through something. But when it's, you're not working at the capacity that you need to be working, that's when those are really, really tough conversations, I think. And that's when like the latter part of what you were saying that she said, it's like, it's not that you have to decide tomorrow that the job isn't good for you, but make sure that you're really growing yourself and that you're willing to like move on when it's time to move on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that. So I think leading your team, but also as a community leader, leading an organization that makes such big impacts for Billings, what are some non-negotiables for you as a leader?
Give me an example. Like,
I don't know, like things that you're like, you might tolerate a little more on this area, but things that you're like, no, this is where I'm set. And that could be leading your team personally.
Yeah.
Or
the non-negotiables are definitely work-life balance. And I definitely lean work because I love the work. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to, I have 18 and 21-year-old sons and, it's been very important to me to be able to be a part of their lives. I definitely, there are seasons, NAIA, the 4 years essentially there, that was like taking a lot of oxygen in my life. That was a season of time. I knew it was temporary. It was absolutely amazing. And you try to incorporate them as much as you can in the planning and being part of it so that it's not just this like only work, only family. And there's like this, kind of too much of a dichotomy. But I think that making sure that we yield to life is important. But at the same time, the non-negotiable is work. We have a job to do. Again, we have people that we answer to. There is a formality to that. I believe that we can do it with balance, but there are going to be those times when work's going to win. And that's just the way that it is. And that's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that, you might go 2 weeks and it's just work. The minute that you can take your breath and reprioritize and shuffle, that's great. But I think that that's probably it. The non-negotiable is just that work ethic. Understanding that family and your quality of life and your, what's important to you, no matter what that is, has to level off. But we do have a job to do at the end of the day.
No, I really relate and like that a lot. And I think sometimes too, as we were talking a little bit earlier, sometimes your family things are the ones that are taking more of your time, energy, attention based on if you have family things going on or a life event or something like that, but knowing that they're seasonal and usually they flip-flop, balance each other out, hopefully.
Well, and that's the gift of the job too, right? Like you need to be able to be in a position where you're not stressed out the minute something goes wrong in your personal life. Like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it needs to be this, okay, this happened. What do we do now? And that open, level of communication so that you can take a deep breath and again, shuffle, reprioritize, and make sure that you're taking care of what needs to be taken care of appropriately.
Yeah, I really like that.
That's awesome. Well, for our young listeners out there, what kind of advice would you give them, like just getting started in life and,
in their career?
Yeah, starting out in their career. Maybe they are starting out in news or maybe they're starting something completely different, or maybe they just don't know what they want to be when they grow up yet. What kind of advice would you give them? I know it's pretty broad, but...
No, I love it. And actually, I have a 21-year-old who's a senior at Rocky, and he did an internship this summer with Century 21. And watching him go through this was like, it was the most rewarding part. Like, it was just this community coming forward for this young professional. It was really, really amazing to see your community in play in that way, right, that we live in. I would say the getting involved components, the Chamber's Next Gen. I think that if you're a young professional speaking for managers or directors or CEOs, trying to get them around a board table so that they see what that's like, so it's never intimidating to them. It's formal and there's work to be done and there's an agenda, but the earlier that they can kind of get in on some of those public speaking opportunities, making sure that they're comfortable sitting around a table of people who they're answering to as stakeholders or board members, I think is very important. And that's a great opportunity to grow people. I think that if you've worked for an organization for 10 years and you've never been around the board table and the board members don't know you, I think that there's opportunity there. I don't want to judge anybody who doesn't have their staff in a boardroom, but obviously.
Right. That's the staff that's doing the work, you know, and so that they can be there, get to know, build those relationships.
Yes. And I think that making sure that you're an advocate for your staff, advocating constantly for your staff is very important. But sorry, I switched gears on you. But I do think that getting leadership billings, youth leadership billings, next gen, I think that from a employer point of view and then from a young professional point of view, to be able to jump in on any of those types of things, volunteering,
that CTA program,
volunteering for like events like Downtown Billings Association and that sort of thing, amazing.
No, I like that Kate's doing an internship because I think you learn so much, even just from my experience. Like I had no idea what a chamber was or like what Visit Billings was. I mean, you hear like, oh, a chamber Visit Billings, but you don't really know until you're in it. And I think I just had a much more enjoyable college senior year because I was going to the NAIA. Like I had the tag, I was going to class and then I was going to the game and Rocky was playing in it. And it was just such a fun experience and getting to know and meet people through Next Gen, through Leadership Billings, and really building those connections because as a young person, it felt like it launched my career in a quicker way than maybe it would have if I just got a normal job and didn't get involved, didn't do anything. So I that sits well.
I'll also say the moment I stepped into Billings Next Gen is when I met. Yeah, that's how I met Marcel. It's how I met actually my core group of friends that I hang out with now. It introduced me to more of the community. I had lived here for a couple years prior to jumping into Next Gen and really hadn't met anybody and hadn't done anything. And I would have been that person who was like, I don't know what there is to do here. And then being involved in groups like that, you learn more. You meet people who want to go out and do those things and build up that community that they're a part of. And so, yeah, I would completely agree. Get involved in those groups for young young entrepreneurs, young business owners, young individuals, and go ahead and learn about the place that you're living in and learn skills that you may not have ever been introduced to.
Yeah. And I think this is the other thing too, is that there's this, and I really do think that it's like a school of thought that's on its way out, but it's this, well, I can't be on a board because I don't have any professional experience in this, or what am I going to bring to a board? I think on the City of Billings boards and commissions, there's like numerous vacancies all of the time. And not every single person who sits on some of those boards and commissions is, an expert in whatever
Everything.
they're sitting, right? And so to be able to apply for some of those positions and get different thought processes on and around those boards, I think is important, and to not really shy away from it. Respect the process. Respect
Absolutely.
what's happening in those, in on those agendas and that sort of thing. But I think that's another thing, is if you're 25 years old and you really love the depot, and that's just like the most important thing to you, then apply to be on the depot board.
Right. Allie and I are both on that, I think, with a nexus because we represent our organizations. But it appealed to me because, and I think that's another great thing of boards. There's so many in Billings. I love the work that like a family service does, but maybe that's not my area that I want to lean into. But I love community. I love events and history. So like the depot seems like a great fit because they're a historic train depot that hosts events. So it's a great fun fit for me. So I think having that opportunity to also find those boards that align more with what you enjoy will help you find a strong community.
Definitely. And then even just getting to know other people, like you guys. I mean, if you think about, okay, go walk the rims, go hike Zimmerman, go to four dances, you're just with these other people who do different things, and you see this community and you invest in it in such a different capacity that you're more willing to stay, or at least, have a positive visitor reciprocal conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Be able to recommend walking the rims,
Yes.
or seeing Pompey's Pillar, like you said,
With like
going out
200
to the
and some
battlefield.
steps
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
I remember that from
It's
that
leg
bus
day.
tour.
Yes.
I'm like, it's
Yes.
like 200 and some steps.
It is 202.
See, yeah.
The Brew Trail and
Didn't we
so
all the
much
museums.
fun.
They just came out with a dessert trail, right?
Yes.
The sweet treat.
Okay, so this
Sweet
was
treat.
Luke. Okay, let me tell you. So the Band Wango Pass that we have for the Brew Trail, which is, you can check in and try different brews and distilleries and ciders and wines or whatever. And if this pass that we invest in every year, so it's available to visitors and residents alike, as part of it for this year, they told us in February, and Luke manages that pass, the Brew Trail Pass. So he has to get, everybody on board so that you have the table tents and everybody knows the code. I mean,
Which
there's
is a lot of
to
work.
It
Like,
is
that's
lot
a
more
ton of work.
I don't think that people understand how
No,
much
I'm
work
like, that's
goes
a
into
ton.
it. Yeah. And so Band Wango offered us this year a pass for free. So, it's kind of a buy one, try one kind of way. We were definitely going to re-up our investment for the Brew Trail Pass because it's been successful because of Luke and because of visitors and residents who obviously love the Brew Trail. But he comes in and he says, hey, we have this extra pass available to us. And I'm like, well, sure. Yeah, because then next year we're paying double because we do all of this work and, And so we had a team meeting and it was like, gosh, and I think for the most part we were all, including me, like, no, I mean, I can't think of right now. We could do a museum pass. We could do the scenic drive that we have, and kind of turn that into a pass. But I can't think of anything right now that would be, we have a lot on our plate, a strategic plan. We have a lot of different changes and projects coming up and plus our normal day-to-day work that we do to market and sell Billings. He goes, we don't have a non-alcohol option. We don't have a family-friendly option. So why don't we do the Sweet Streets Pass? Sold. I mean, like instantaneously.
Literally speaks to my soul.
I'm in.
Like donuts, sweet treats.
So all the graphics, all the kind of funny.
And they're fun. They're like colorful.
That's all him.
Yeah.
Yeah. We would not have Sweet Treats if it wasn't for Luke.
Thank you,
because
Luke.
yes. And we'll think, there you go, Band Wango, because we'll be paying 2 in because it's obviously highly successful.
Like, can we get a discount?
It's like, what, I can go to Proof and then end up with like a t-shirt or something?
I love
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And
So
their donuts are really good too.
they are. Gosh, we have, everything from
And they have a
Harper
cute
and
little
Madison.
truck
And,
now.
oh, yeah.
It's like
they
just
do.
adorable. And it's like a mini, like, It's just like
It is
midgets.
so
Yeah, it's
cute.
really cute.
Their
Yeah.
little truck they drive around. They did really good graphics on that too.
They did. So we have the executive director of Visit Billings. We can't let you go without asking, like, what's been one of your favorite, or maybe a couple of those events or sports things that you've worked on in your career at Visit Billings that you've brought?
Yeah, I think that when I came into the position, they had worked about 8 years to get BMW, Motorcycle Owners of America. So the BMW MOA that we had in 2015, that was...
And that was at Metro?
It was at
Yep.
Metro Park, yes. And it was my predecessor, Metro Park staff. There was a lot of work that had gone into trying to get them to finally sign on the bottom line. And so I think bringing their work to fruition finally and hosting BMW MOA was a big, big one. You know, those events, as you know, for helping us work on some of them too, Marcel, is you don't do them ever. You've never done them before. You don't really do them again, unless you get like a repetitive contract like we had with the NAIA, but like a Gold Wing or
Because that was downtown.
Yeah,
I mean, a ton of fun, so much work. And you're buying all this stuff that's one-time use.
It is. And people don't know that you pay to have those events in your community now, right? So, with the $130,000 to have Gold Wings, we're not selling raffle tickets anymore, fortunately, because we have TBID funds. But, those are big street parties. You're planning, you're funding, you're budgeting. You're paying,
you're hosting.
Yeah, and you're paying Metro Park. We're the renters of Metro Park so that, BMW and Goldwing can come and take over the campus. So I think any of those motorcycle rallies, because they're so fun too, those I treasure for sure. But by all means, the NAIA. I mean, you want to talk about, all of us there's so many of us in this community who worked on it. Obviously, it was all staff, everybody on deck. But the success that gave the region and Montana and how fun it was to be able to watch these Frontier Conference schools play at Metro Park and play in their home states and win championships, that was a total gift. And, you just think of the people who came together from Rocky, the honorary coaches, all of the schools that came together for characters,
Well, you guys did so much. I mean, you're scheduling gyms for practices and you're scheduling team hosts. You're just doing so much those are big lifts too.
Oh gosh, like
rewarding, but
Rocky
huge
Mountain
lifts.
College did trying to find 10 gyms that you can, in the middle of the spring that you can go ahead and take over for a couple of days, right? But, any board meeting is like a win, right?
Right, yeah.
Let alone
exactly.
citywide events. But, and the other thing is too, is you look at people, it cannot be underestimated the people who we have in this community who are willing to take risk. Every tournament owner, whether it's William Henry with his basketball tournaments or Brad Zimmer and Coleman Rockwell for softball or, Triple Play Academy for their baseball. You look at, Matt McDonald and Jake Penwell, who, it was their dream to have the Yellowstone International Air Show, and everybody that they got on board and around the table to help that come to fruition. Those people cannot be underestimated as major contributors to this community. They make a difference, whether they're hosting a 40-team tournament or a $2.5 million air show. It's
and like
very,
the
very
memories
important.
that they're like making for all of these people. Like the air show, I wasn't here that weekend. I saw the practicing and everything, but all
was
of
awesome.
those people there, stunning. Like it was just such a cool event for Billings, but knowing there's a ton of work that goes behind.
Yeah.
Getting
A
anything
plane
like that.
landed on a truck.
No, I have
landed on a
FOMO.
truck.
I have
Yeah.
FOMO like crazy.
Yeah. But, the other things are major meetings and conventions that people don't have any clue happen in our community. I mean, you might see the influx of people downtown or in our restaurants, but, like Steve Warlick always says, it's, people don't, at a hotel, when people check in, where they're checking in from. It's very easy to know the impact from a lodging perspective. But the people who walk in to the restaurants or the retailers who don't have, I'm from, Ekalaka or Costa Mesa, California on their foreheads, you just don't know. But a meeting and convention like we have in summer of 2025, we'll have thousands of people in downtown doing a general session at Alberta Bear Theater, taking over all of the hotels in the downtown core. And, like having
Which is so exciting.
It is. And people they don't know about that because it just flies under the radar, right?
Yeah.
We're selling it. The hotels take it to contract and then they do so much work. But in order to get those types of events, Alberta Bear has to come together. We have to host them on a site inspection, all of the things that you guys do for bringing in businesses and other types of business. People just don't realize. And
availability and dates. I mean, hotels, we booked our annual meeting and we had to go on a Wednesday, which is great, but they're booked so far in advance. So getting the venues like an Alberta Bear plus all of your hotels and a weekend that aligns with availability too is just a huge logistical details to work out.
Agreed. And then you have events like the Big Sky State Games. We're going to be very fortunate to have 3 years starting next year of the Montana Special Olympics.
Which is so cool.
Yeah. And so we're just very, very fortunate to have what we have in Billings and just making sure that we're fostering that and taking care of it. Because this is the other thing is, we have great events and it's important for us to foster those events and support the people who are planning those events because you can't just go get new events all the time, right?
And it's not like, I called somebody and now I get an event.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of
you guys go to trade shows, right?
Back and forth.
To build those relationships and bring those people here.
Definitely. But when you look at like the Nile, those Chase Hawks, Burn the Point type of events, Strawberry Festival, the runs, all the road races, Montana Marathon, the Montana Women's Run. If those events go away tomorrow, those are impactful on many, many levels, whether it's from a visitor perspective or a residential perspective. You can't just replace that tomorrow. So, it's great that we get new events and these kind of one-time events that come into the community and do a major impact. You can't forget those annual events that we can help market and sell and help grow and take care of.
Yeah, and look forward to.
Yeah.
Every year.
I look forward to the Run Turkey Run every year.
See?
Thanksgiving
Did you
morning.
win?
Yes, we win for costume every year.
Nice job. What do you do?
So the first year we did it, we were a Thanksgiving meal. So someone dressed up as a turkey, someone dressed up as peas and carrots, someone dressed up as gravy, mashed potatoes.
And are you making these
I was
costumes?
a pie, a sweet potato. Yes.
Kayla's very theatrical.
Then last year we were a turducken. So somebody was a chicken, someone was a turkey, that was gravy. Somebody was a gravy boat. And then someone was a duck. And it was great. And I will not share what we will be this year.
Oh,
but I can tell you it will be awesome.
It's going to be blue ribbon level.
We make the newspaper every year.
That is so cool. See, I love that.
But I get all my sisters and sister-in-laws and my mom, and we all do it. And we go do the 5K in the morning. And then we go home and we feel fine to eat all we want.
Exactly.
It's true.
Exactly.
No limit.
So, but it is fun to see all the people out that do that every year. And it's the community support of it. So,
Yeah, it really is. And then you get some people who, come from out of town for it,
Oh, yeah. For the women's run, I think a ton of people
yeah,
come for that.
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Big Sky State Games.
Big deal.
Tons of people.
Really big deal. Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick moment for another sponsor message before we jump into our rapid fire questions.
Thank you to the Small Business Development Center for sponsoring The Vault at 201 North Broadway. The Small Business Development Center offers free personalized support from business plans to financial projections and beyond, empowering small businesses to thrive. Reach out to us at bigsky.economicdevelopment.org. All right, welcome back. We're jumping into our rapid fire questions. So as our loyal listeners know, is we always ask 3 rapid fire questions at the end of every podcast. And so my first question is for you. What is your go-to coffee order?
Oh, quad shot espresso in a short cup with just a little bit of hot water.
Wow.
Yeah.
Strong. Right to the point.
No fluff.
Certain coffee
No
shop.
fluff.
Yep.
Yeah, great.
true.
Okay. What is one of your favorite things to do in the Billings area during the winter?
During the winter, when there is enough snow, cross-country skiing, without a doubt. Pioneer Park, amazing. I also think that in the wintertime, it's very good to, even with a ton of snow on the ground, to take advantage of the trails and to be able to take advantage of our blue skies and sunshine, even when it's 10 below zero.
Mm-hmm.
Snowshoeing, crazy workout.
It is.
So I just thought when you're doing the trails, maybe you'd have to snowshoe if there was a lot of snow on there. And
I've never cross country. I've only downhill skied, so I need to try the cross country.
you work like
'Cause I
every
feel like
muscle in
that's a
your
huge
body when you
workout.
cross country ski.
It's a great workout.
I'll make Allie take me.
Yeah, Allie knows right.
I know
knows-
she does it. I'm like, I don't know, Allie.
Yeah, no, you should try it.
We
And you
will,
can go to the
yeah.
base camp or some of the other, outdoor shops to rent your cross-country
Okay,
skis.
that's good to know.
Yeah. If you've never experienced Yellowstone in the winter, that for me is by far my favorite winter, like of the region. I have a lot of great things that I love about Billings in the wintertime. There's some things about Montana I don't like about winter too. Like, let's talk about the cold. Yeah,
Negative
all the
yeah.
time. Yeah.
It's okay.
But it's just fine. We
The
all
like
deal with it.
17 days
though.
of below zero we had this last winter.
Yes.
Right. What do they call those? Because my family's done them. The buses with the tracks.
Yeah, they're like stagecoaches.
Yeah, they call them a stagecoach,
Yeah.
and they go through the park.
And Xanterra changes the tracks from, tires from tracks in the wintertime. And if you ever need any insight, I'm a decent source of Yellowstone information for sure. But my colleague and board member, Shelley Mann, is also a Yellowstone expert. So if you ever...
And it's right there.
It is. But if you've not cross-country skied in Yellowstone, that's an experience all in itself. We've snowmobiled Yellowstone in the past with guides. That is awesome too. If like once you turn off the machines and it's so quiet, but there is something very special about cross-country skiing in Yellowstone.
Awesome.
Maybe we'll have to go, Kayla.
Yeah, I think so.
Research.
We'll get orange and blue jumpsuits,
I
like
can't
snowsuits.
I'll get goggles, lenses to match. Great.
And my last question for you is, what is the best piece of advice you ever received?
Oh, yes. And I actually told somebody this recently who had a really, really bad day. Never take criticism from somebody you would not ask for advice.
Oh, I like that.
I really love that. That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been so
It's
much
been a
fun
pleasure.
having you. Thank you for giving us your time and hanging out with us on the vault.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Alex.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Make sure you are subscribed to The Vault at 201 North Broadway, wherever you podcast, including YouTube.
Connect with us on Facebook at The Vault at 201 North Broadway and Instagram at The Vault_201.
Don't forget to visit us at thevault@201.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
We will see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you to Big Sky Economic Development for supporting The Vault at 201 North Broadway. Big Sky Economic Development provides leadership and resources for business creation, expansion, retention, new business recruitment, and community development. If you are starting a business, growing or expanding your business, diversifying your customer base, or maybe you're looking for business trainings to attend to continue to learn and grow, they're excited and here to help. Even if you're thinking of relocating your company into Billings, they're a resource for you. BSED also provides resources for community development initiatives by planning, partnering, and managing projects and administering grants for redevelopment and placemaking. Their workforce development program brings together industry and education partners to anticipate and respond to community workforce needs. And they provide talent attraction and retention resources for your business to use under the community brand Better Off in Billings. BSED's Rock 31 program is focused on helping startups thrive. And in their location in downtown Billings, they have 2 floors dedicated to co-working and additional spaces throughout their building open to the community to host their meetings, events, and trainings. Visit bigskyeconomicdevelopment.org. Again, that's bigskyeconomicdevelopment.org or follow them on Facebook and LinkedIn.